Chair. Confirm, Chair. Confirm, Chair.
Right, thank you very much. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the meeting of Cabinet. My name is Jonathan Lester, the leader of the Council, and I will be chairing this meeting. In addition to those councillors present in the room, we have some other councillors joining our meeting remotely. I will now check that they can hear us and we can hear them. So we have Councillor Harvey.
Yes, Leader, I can see and hear you all.
Excellent, thank you very much. And Councillor Stark.
Yes, again, I can see and hear you, Leader.
Thank you very much, and thank you for attending. Okay, and we also have Cabinet members in attendance and group leaders and scrutiny chairpersons. Okay, we also have a number of officers in attendance, and they will be introduced when they're called upon. So I now formally open the meeting. The agenda papers and other relevant information to this meeting is available on the public viewing of the Herefordshire County website. Council is streaming this meeting live on Herefordshire Council's YouTube channel and making a recording. To ensure that recording quality is maintained, please speak as clearly as possible and keep background noise to a minimum. Microphones should be muted when you are not speaking. Please ensure that mobile phones and other devices are turned to silent. Others are permitted to film, photograph, and record the public meeting, providing that it does not disrupt the business of the meeting. If any members of the public do attend or are in attendance who do not wish to be filmed or photographed, please notify a member of staff. As we move through the agenda, in addition to discussion by Cabinet members, I will invite group leaders and their representatives to indicate if they wish to provide the views of their group or questions from their group. Where appropriate, I will also call on scrutiny chairpersons to comment on behalf of their committee. I will permit group leaders to speak once on each item. Voting will be undertaken by show of hands in the room. Only Cabinet members physically in attendance may vote. So the first item on the agenda is apologies for absence. We have apologies from Councillor Durkin, Councillor Powell, Councillor Mason, and Councillor Hercombe. Also, we have apologies from Councillor Crockett and Councillor James. I'd like to add that Councillor Mason cannot be with us today because his wife gave birth to a baby girl on the weekend, so we give him our best wishes. Happy news. And also, Councillor James asked me to say that due to a family illness, he's been called away at short notice, and because of the short notice of the apologies, could not get anybody else to attend because they were all attending to other commitments. Item 2 of the agenda is, are there any declarations of interest? So are there any Schedule 1, Schedule 2 or other interests or items on the agenda today? No, we'll proceed with minutes of the item 3 of the minutes of the previous meeting held on 28th of September. No matters of accuracy have been notified to the monitoring officer. Cabinet members. Right. Okay, we haven't got them. No, I didn't think so. Right, so we will ratify those at the next cabinet meeting. Agenda item 4 is members of the public have the opportunity to submit a question to Cabinet in writing ahead of the meeting. We have received questions for this meeting and the responses are published as a supplement to the agenda. Those who have submitted questions have been given the opportunity to submit a written supplementary question or ask their question live. Supplementary questions are to be no more than 1 minute in length and not include a question. I will now ask to confirm how many supplementary questions we have received.
We've received one public supplementary question and 2 from councillors.
Thank you. So now we can receive.
So, the first public supplementary question is from Mrs. Moraski in Brenton, Hereford, which is to the Cabinet Member for Transport and Infrastructure. It says, thank you. It is excellent to hear that Pontrallas railway station is a priority for the council, especially as the new station is likely to cost much less than the 12.3 million that Cabinet today is recommending be allocated for developing business case for a new road. Worcester Parkway Station had an outline benefit cost ratio of 3.54, with 3 times the number of passengers using Worcester Parkway than forecast. The actual benefit cost ratio achieved is even higher. Opening Pontrallas Station is likely to have a benefit cost ratio of 3 or higher, whilst meeting so many other council policy objectives, including tackling climate change and transferring heavy freight from road to rail. In comparison, the Southern Link Road is estimated to have a benefit cost ratio of 2.0, based on 2014 cost estimates. The Treasury Green Book recommends that when comparing alternative capital projects, those with the highest benefit cost ratio should be programmed ahead of those with lower benefit cost ratios. With Pontrallas Station, a priority of this council, would the Cabinet Member please explain the evidence which justifies the recommendation for 12.3 million to be allocated not to the Pontrallas Station project, but to developing a new road project which offers a lower return, poorer value for money to the taxpayer, and none of the benefits you have mentioned.
Councillor Price.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Martin, for your supplementary question. Mostly around BCRs of different projects, and further work is required to confirm the BCR for the Pontrallas site. And our role as a council will be to support the partners that will ultimately deliver that scheme. We will work with Network Rail and Transport for Wales to help inform and develop that business case. I'll leave it there for the moment.
Okay, thank you. We now move on to questions from members. Councillor Hitchener, you're first up. Please ask your supplementary question. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. The Cabinet report states that the 12.3 million budget is to enable land negotiations to commence and initial works to start, all before a business case has been developed. In his reply, Councillor Price does not categorically say that initial works will not start until a business case has been approved. I will be disappointed if Cabinet members accept a report which allowed such work to start. Several Cabinet members were portfolio holders during the last Conservative administration, when the Blue School Street fiasco occurred. Second, there was out of control spending on the Inner Link Road, which not only built a costly road, it also failed to deliver the transport hub. Third, the failed procurement process for the SRR in 2018-19, for which Councillor Price should accept some responsibility. And fourth, for the poor value of money for the BBLP contract. Lessons are contained in the internal audit reports, copies of which I suggest Cabinet members read so that they can learn from their previous mistakes. The administration I headed spent a lot of effort on putting in place procedures so such events would not be repeated. As demonstrated above, the last Conservative administration do not have a good record. The ability to spend 12.3 million before a full business case is developed does not fill me with confidence. Would Cabinet amend the proposal today so that it clearly states that no money will be spent on works on the ground until a full business case is accepted by Council and the money to complete the project is available and guaranteed? That would surely be a better practice. We do not want an HS2 type disaster in Herefordshire.
Councillor Price.
Yes, well, thank you for your question. There's an awful lot of content in there that's related to what we started with. I will dispute the fact that some of the contents that you set in there, which you could certainly do, and I'm absolutely categorical about the Inner Reach Road. That was not overspent, as you say, it was within budget to the point to where we got the delivery. On the question of whether or not we're going to change the current funding in the capital budget, at this moment in time, that money is put into the capital budget so that we can do the necessary work to get the business case brought forward for the delivery of what is a priority for this council, and that is to build the South Wye Utilities Road. And we will do it with the process, and your administration will be involved in the process just the same as we have been ever since this council has been formed. So my answer is that at this moment in time, that money is there to make sure that the processes to go forward are suitably funded. We will not be building that road until we have secured the funding for it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have another question from Councillor Fagan, who has submitted a written supplementary question. I believe Mark's going to read out that question. Thank you.
Question from Councillor Fagan. The expressions of interest show that despite not being asked to meet the key aims of the wellbeing strategy, the best start in life and mental wellbeing, the themes emerging out of our practice with children and the impact of COVID on our communities, community groups are well primed and willing to deliver these aims with some capital investment. The community paradigm intends to empower our community sector to strengthen the fabric of our society, providing universal care and making it resilient to future shocks. I would suggest you are literally throwing the baby out with the bathwater, because the papers say that super hub funding is not in line with current priorities. Can you confirm that strengthening our beleaguered but vital third sector during a crisis in children and families and mental health following the pandemic is no longer a priority? If it is, what alternative action will we see to support this sector?
Thank you for the question, and Councillor Gandhi.
Thank you, Councillor Fagan, for your supplementary question. My original response confirms that we are committed to supporting residents and communities, and the community and voluntary sector is integral to that work. The recently approved Health and Wellbeing Strategy identified a best start in life and good mental health as key priorities for the county, and as Chair of the Health and Wellbeing Board, I will be ensuring that those priorities are actively addressed for the benefit of individuals and communities. The Super Hubs proposal has not been dismissed, but the wider strategic review of Talk Community that I referred to in my original response is key to us developing a better understanding of what is being delivered and where there may be gaps in order to ensure that any future funding will bring real benefits to the county and the residents of the county.
Thank you, Councillor Gandhi, and thank you for those questions from members of the public and fellow members. We now move on to agenda item 6, which is the reports from scrutiny committees, and we have 2 reports from the Environment and Sustainability Scrutiny Committee regarding flood risk and river water pollution. These are at page 3 of the supplement 1 of the agenda pack. Councillor Stark is joining us remotely, and as chairperson, I would invite him to introduce the recommendations from the committee. Councillor Stark.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. On the 25th of September, the Environment and Sustainability Scrutiny Committee looked at 2 topics. One was an earlier scrutiny on the local flood risk management strategy action plan and your executive response to it. And the second was on river pollution, where we had an informed and illuminating discussion covering not only the causes of and the processes by which pollution is transferred to the rivers, but we also looked at the statutory tools that were available to the council to take direct action in terms of mitigating it. And we also got an update and considered the progress that the council had made in responding to that challenge. The result of that, Leader, are the 6 recommendations that I want to put before Cabinet today. One is a further one on the local flood risk management strategy action plan, and 5 are on river pollution. And I'm looking forward to getting the executive response in due course. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stark, and just a special thanks to the committee for considering these very key and important issues. I would just like to ask Councillor Swinglehurst as Cabinet Member for Environment to respond.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Stark. I have to say I feel a very well informed, well considered scrutiny, and the recommendations are very good, and we will be responding to them in due course. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Swinglehurst. So, Cabinet members, are you content to note the recommendations of a response to be made in due course by the Cabinet? I'll propose from the Chair, a seconder. Councillor Swinglehurst, all in favour? Thank you. It's unanimous. Thank you very much. We now move to agenda item 7, which is the capital programme review and update proposals to recommend to Council for approval the revised capital investment budget for 2023-24 onwards. This item begins on page 11 of the agenda pack. So, Councillor Stoddart, this is within your portfolio, so I invite you to introduce the item. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. I'm very happy to propose this report to Cabinet. It sets out this administration's capital programme, which is focused on addressing the issues that matter to the people of Herefordshire, such as investment in the market towns and rural areas and the deteriorating condition of our roads. We will also continue to deliver on the ambition of the Council to achieve net zero by 2030, and there is an investment of over £20 million in active travel and renewables to support this in the 2024-2025 budget. The delivery of the current capital programme in 2023-24 is progressing well. The demonstration centre at Hillside is due to be completed this year. The programme of property improvement and maintenance of our schools and vital investment in IT are all on target to complete during 2023-2024. Supporting our journey to a net zero and nature-rich Herefordshire, 6 schools have benefited from free installation of solar PV. The retrofitting of fuel-poor households is ongoing. EV infrastructure is being rolled out, and we continue to invest in wetlands. Throughout all of these projects, we ensure that the Council achieves value for money and the maximum return on its capital investment through our stringent procurement processes and contract management. Whilst the majority of the capital programme, as approved by the previous administration in February 2023, remains, there are, however, a number of changes that I wish to propose to Cabinet today. The first proposed change is that we have identified 3 projects that have no funding assigned to them. These are the Passenger Transport Fleet, Masters House Phase 2, and the Herefordshire Retrofit Hub. Whilst these projects have no funds assigned to them, they do, however, require Council officers to manage them. The removal of these projects will enable officers to be reallocated to other tasks, thus providing and ensuring better value for money. However, in the future, should appropriate grants be made available, then these projects will be re-looked at. As part of the review, and in due consideration of the advice from officers, we looked at a number of existing projects in order to free up funding. Subsequently, we have decided to remove the funding for super hubs of £2 million from the capital programme. This follows officers' advice that the community hubs are being reviewed and investment at this time would be inappropriate. This was previously explained in greater detail by Councillor Gandy in her answer to the question from Councillor Fagan. Secondly, the removal of the Development Partnership Activities budget frees up £10.2 million of corporate borrowing and reserves. Thirdly, the My Account budget of £0.4 million was underspent on Phase 1, with the budget being held for a Phase 2. However, no projects have come forward, and this budget will subsequently be reallocated. Finally, utilising the £3 million BT clawback aspect and reducing the overall project by £2 million, the Fastershire project will release £5 million of corporate borrowing as the project is coming to an end, and it will be replaced by Project Gigabit, which is fully funded and run by BD UK. In total, these actions have made available a total of £17.6 million of funding that can be reallocated. This, together with £14.2 million of unallocated capital receipts, which has been unallocated for 4 years, has enabled us to have a sum of £31.8 million available. The first new project that we would like to propose to be added to the capital programme is the Southern Link Road for a total of £12.3 million. This will enable this administration to start to address the issue that the people of Herefordshire have in regards to traffic congestion on the A49 through the provision of a necessary infrastructure to support the growing of the Herefordshire economy. This funding will enable land negotiations to begin and initial works to commence while a full business case is developed. Secondly, in support of the proposal to relocate the library into the Shire Hall, we propose £3 million for Shire Hall improvement works to fund the works required to enable this historic building to once again open and support its use as a cultural hub of the county. As part of our pledge to put children's services at the top of our agenda, we will allocate £0.1 million to conduct the works necessary to create a care leavers base in the Shire Hall Annex, thus providing these young people with the support and assistance that they need and deserve. One theme that came across to us time and time again during the election campaign was the condition of the county's roads. We will begin to address this across the county by proposing an additional £10 million to improve the road network through resurfacing those parts of Herefordshire's highway network which requires the most urgent work. This will be in addition to the £2.558 million pothole fund and the already committed £4.085 million of highway investment for next year. This thus clearly demonstrating that we have listened to the people of Herefordshire. As presented and approved at a previous cabinet meeting, we will work with local partners and businesses in a strategic way to improve the economy of Herefordshire. The inclusion of the partnership with the Wye Valley Trust to enable the development of an education centre at Hereford County Hospital, together with the Council's partnership with Herefordshire and Worcestershire Group Training Association, or HWGTA, to enable further development of vocational work-based skills across the county are examples of this. As these projects will require full repayment by the respective organisations, including all interest costs, they will have no overall effect on the capital or revenue budgets. Over the last 4 years, the market towns in the rural areas of the county have felt ignored and that there was a Hereford City bias. The final project that we will adjust in this capital programme is one of employment land and incubation space. The previous administration required this project to be funded through the sale of units and plots, external grants or rental income. In the last 4 years, no sites have been developed or plots been sold, and subsequently nothing has progressed. This administration will break this cycle, and in support of the creation of jobs and the economy across Herefordshire, we propose a total of £12 million to be assigned to this project. This being made up through utilising existing funding of £7.2 million with an additional £4.8 million from the capital receipt balance to enable investment in employment land in Herefordshire with no expectation to repay the reserves. From this, £8 million will be allocated to Model Farm in Ross and Wye, enabling this long-standing project to develop the first 4 industrial plots and will deliver to Ross and Wye high-tech and high-paid jobs. The remaining £4 million will be split amongst the 4 other market towns of Bromyard, Kington, Ledbury and Leicester to provide funding for the market town initiative plans, enabling them to take forward the purchase of employment land together with the provision of the infrastructure which will then enable them to bid for central government grants and funding and thus bring about additional employment in the market towns. I would now like to address the flexible use of capital receipts. In the 2016-2017 local government financial settlement, the government announced new flexibilities which allowed local authorities to use capital receipts to fund transformational expenditure, including redundancy costs. The direction permits authorities to use the proceeds from asset sales to fund the revenue costs of projects that will deliver ongoing savings, reduce costs, increase revenue, or support a more efficient provision of services. Herefordshire Council has not exercised this flexibility since its inception in 2016-2017, but propose that they will use this flexibility to fund up to £1.6 million of qualifying transformation expenditure in 2023-24 to generate efficiencies, ongoing savings and reduction in the cost of service delivery. This figure represents a modest use of the flexibility by the Council, and I can confirm there are robust controls in place. In conclusion, this amendment to the capital programme delivers on our pledges to the people of Herefordshire. The table at paragraph 17 of the report shows that this programme is fully affordable, as it requires no additional funding or borrowing. Rather, it is prudent utilisation of available funding without the need for increased borrowing or use of our reserves. I strongly recommend this capital programme and its full recommendations to my Cabinet colleagues.
Thank you, Councillor Stoddart, and thank you for talking us through the rationale and reasons for proposals that we're putting forward and wishing to agree today. Cabinet members, do I have any comments or questions that you would like to raise? I know you've all been working hard on these proposals and reviewing the capital programme. No, if not, we'll go straight to.
Excuse me, Chair. Councillor Harvey has her hand up. Raised her hand up on Zoom.
Yes, okay, thank you. I was just about to go to group leaders and I would invite Councillor Harvey, who got there first. No hat there, Councillor Harvey.
Didn't need one, but I have one here. In case I do. Yeah, thank you, Leader, and thank you, Cabinet Member, for the introduction to the report. Independents for Herefordshire find some of the changes that you're proposing here really quite worrying. I mean, following many years of mismanagement, waste and overspend in the handling of capital projects, in 2019, our administration brought in a number of safeguards in the way that projects were planned for. And these included a requirement to submit outline and then full business cases for projects proposed for the capital programme, and for these business cases to be publicly published and shared in a timely manner with both scrutiny and full counsel prior to seeking any approvals for inclusion in the capital programme, let alone permission to commence spending. Now, I've asked officers for copies of the relevant business cases for your proposed changes and additions to the programme that you've got in the report before Cabinet today. And I've been told that there are none, since the requirement to provide them has not been formally built into the Constitution and financial regulations for this council. Whilst I'm not particularly surprised that the characters involved in this administration are in a hurry to return to their bad old ways, I am disappointed that the Chief Executive, statutory and senior officers have not fought harder to retain the safeguardings, improvements and governance and public transparencies which the Independents for Herefordshire and the Greens worked so hard to introduce over the last 4 years. How can councillors and the public be assured that this minority administration is to be trusted to deliver to time and to cost when it's got such a horrible record historically on this matter, and when even the most basic levels of project planning and preparation are already being actively avoided? As to the detail of what's being proposed, the use of capital funding to fund revenue projects further erodes the council's holding of publicly owned assets. Now, particularly when you're shying away from giving the level of transparency to how you're actually proceeding to do this. And officers are saying, well, because it's being spent on revenue projects, we don't even have to disclose the spending of that in the capital programme, even though it's capital funding. So accounting and government spending rules mean that you cannot spend capital funds on projects like road building until you have approved business cases. And this is exactly the problem that you Conservatives had previously with the Southern Link Road, which resulted in you taking many millions away from road maintenance and other important revenue spend to fund the impossible job of making a standalone business case for that particular road. And if you're determined to set out upon this fool's errand once again, you absolutely must make the case for that investment through the proper channels and expect to receive detailed scrutiny throughout. You're proposing to withdraw investment from community capacity building through Talk Community, which is the main mechanism which our administration, and to the degree that you did it previously, yours also, managed to minimise the pressures, particularly on adult social care. And, you know, we should all note that the adult social care are currently forecasting a more than £3 million overspend by the end of this financial year, and those pressures are only going to continue. It's short-sighted to remove capital project lines from the programme, which are intended to be funded from grants. It's important to show ambition and intent with these project lines and to encourage officers to actively work to secure the routes by which those projects can be funded. And those include, as you've said, the retrofit hub for improving people's ability to manage their heating costs. Community super hubs, which are really important. And we heard at Cabinet last week how many community groups are deeply concerned that that funding is being taken away. And the improved transport fleet, that's desperately needed. And public realm and heritage improvements, such as delivering on this council's promises on the Masters House landscaping in Ledbury and town centre projects in the other market towns. And not least of which, the Masters House project is actually the major cost there, is the resurfacing and relaying out the lines of the car park itself, which is an income generating asset for this council and is more than 7 years overdue because it can't happen until the landscaping has been complete. And only today we've had complaints from members of the public who've received parking tickets for, as they've been told, parking outside of the lines that are impossible to see on the car park now. So I would question whether those sorts of parking tickets are even enforceable at the moment with the condition of the lining. Now, that's just one example. It's a real shame that, you know, these changes are being brought in too quickly, without any evidence of the planning that is necessary to demonstrate that they've been clearly thought through, and the transparency that allows the public and councillors and full council to be confident that you're a safe pair of hands. You know, and I really would question how much longer it's going to be that, you know, the Liberal group continues to enable you to sit here as a minority administration and behave in this fashion. It really is starting to get a little bit out of hand. If you want to make these projects come forward, do the work that's necessary to put the work in, evidence the business cases, bring that evidence forward, publish it so that it's transparent, and put it into the capital programme when you put your budget forward in the new year. This is too much too soon.
Thank you very much, Councillor Harvey, for your comments. Next group leader, I think it was Councillor Chowns.
Thank you, Councillor Lefter. Councillor Stoddart, may I begin with my tongue firmly in my cheek by congratulating you for matching the dizzying heights of double think and double speak that we've seen recently from Rishi Sunak in presenting this as the budget that's all about meeting our net zero commitments, while actually presenting budget amendments that will remove funding from home insulation and energy efficiency and increase funding for road building. Really quite extraordinary. I've a number of concerns about a number of propositions that you'll be forward in this paper. The retrofit hub. I mean, you talked about this as, removing projects that have no funding assigned to them. Well, you could very easily resolve that in the case of the retrofit hub by assigning some funding to it instead of to one of the other things that you're proposing to assign funding to. But instead you removed it when actually you could put some capital receipts into it to get the project off the ground while the officers are going forward with seeking the grant funding, and then you could make another amendment to the capital budget when that grant funding comes off the ground. But we all recognise that supporting householders with home energy efficiency is one of the most cost-effective things that could possibly be done. It has not just environmental benefit, but also social benefit, helping people to reduce their housing costs, helping them to live more warmly and comfortably, and of course it creates large numbers of highly skilled jobs. And in fact, investment in home insulation has one of the highest benefit cost ratios of any project that ever came into my desk when in this council. From memory, something like a PCR of between 6 and 8. So I find it absolutely extraordinary that you're just removing that from this budget instead of actually putting some money into it. The project that already has a business case, it's ready to go. I think it's a real abdication of leadership to abandon it. Core community super hubs. I talked about this a little bit last week at Cabinet, and since then I've had further conversations with representatives of the voluntary sector in Herefordshire who are devastated. That is not too strong a word. They are devastated that the rug has been pulled out from under them in terms of this funding that they've been told was available. Councillor Gandy indicated that it was oversubscribed. Just because something is oversubscribed doesn't mean that you cancel it altogether. I'm sure those organisations would have been much happier to have missed out on funding because another organisation was determined to be even better able to spend it locally rather than just have the rug pulled out from it entirely. And that was funding that was funded by capital receipts. It's money that is in the council's bank account right now. You could and should make the decision to invest that in the local community in projects that are already, ready and raring to go, providing direct practical support to people in all sorts of communities all around the county, by the way, rather than what you appear to have done is to put that into either the Shire Hall in Hereford or the SLR in Hereford. And to present this as a budget set of budget amendments that is about helping the community more widely is simply very far off the mark. I also think it's really disappointing that in presenting this you try to sort of blame it on officers. Officers advise that funding at this time is inappropriate. This is a political decision. You should own it, take responsibility for that, and I think it's a really painful letting down of the local voluntary sector. Strategic housing development has been removed entirely from the budget, and this would have been fully funded by return on investment. So this is a clear example of where the council can use its powers at no net cost to itself to lead by example, to help catalyse development within the county that is a strong social benefit. And I think it's deeply disappointing that this administration is abdicating both this responsibility and the opportunity to do this. My account, you mentioned that no projects have come forward. My account is supposed to be about improving the way that the council interacts with residents and the kind of usability of council services for residents. I mean, I can personally think of plenty of things that this council could do to improve the usability and accessibility of our services for residents. So I'm really very surprised to hear that the reason for removing this is because nobody can think of anything worth doing with it. I think perhaps another thing is required. Gloucestershire, you're removing £5 million of potential borrowing from this, and this was to be spent on the most isolated, hard-to-reach areas. I recognise that there's a capital receipt that we're able to deal with, but this was to be spent in areas like the Golden Valley, and under my work as Cabinet member responsible for Gloucestershire, we did things like, for example, putting in place measures like the digital household grant that tied people over until the government finally pulled its finger out and gets broadband out to everybody. I am concerned that removing this £5 million will mean that there is less funding available for those small minority of households that are hardest to reach, struggling most with lack of access to broadband facilities. And this will inevitably mean that these businesses and these homes will have to wait even longer. Resurfacing, you're planning to take £10 million of corporate debt on board in order to resurface some roads. £10 million is a drop in the ocean after 13 years of austerity, which has meant that we now have a deficit of essentially more than £300 million, according to the last report, in terms of the amount that's needed to get our road back up to a decent standard. So this is an absolute drop in the ocean, an expensive and very tiny sticking plaster for the problems caused by 13 years of Conservative underinvestment in roads, local roads. And we know that, you know, a previous administration some years ago did this, borrowed a bunch of money, put it into the roads, and it made no discernible difference at this point. So what makes you think it's sensible to spend £10 million on this small and expensive sticking plaster? And crucially, how will you make decisions about how that funding is allocated? I've got some very specific requests and recommendations that I'll come to in a minute on that. But first, let's talk about the FLR. It's to be funded with £7 million of capital receipts, including the money taken from the local voluntary sector and the super hubs, and £5.5 million of potential borrowing, but there is no business case. And this has already been pointed out by colleagues, both councillors and outside the council. Got excellent questions from Ms Morawiecka pointing out that the rate of return, the benefit cost ratio of an alternative project is far, far higher. And, you know, this project at BCR2 back in 2014, we know that construction costs have gone through the roof since then. What on earth makes people in this administration think that this is actually going to be a sensible use of money? And of course, £12.3 million isn't the cost of this road. It appears to be an entirely random and unjustified number that's just been put into this budget. On what basis? There is zero paperwork to justify this. We have no idea it would actually cost to build the road. The funding is there to enable negotiations to begin, you said, Councillor Stoddart. Councillor Price, you said we won't be building the road until we've secured the funding for it. So why are you putting £12.5 million into the budget for it if you won't be building it until you've got the funding for it? You don't even know how much it's going to cost and you don't know whether it'll be worth doing. So it's, in my view, utterly irresponsible to put this into the budget and start spending money on this again when you've got no clue whether it's worthwhile and what it will cost. Shire Hall. So in this budget revision, we've got at least £6 million of costs put into that, in addition to the cost, which has still not been clarified to members, by the way, of abandoning the Maylord proposition. So we've got a proposal here that's twice the price and half as nice, essentially. Further away, no pedestrianised access, out on a limb in an unwelcoming building. We're going to have the opportunity to scrutinise the full business case when it comes forward, and I'm looking forward to that opportunity. But we still could have both the Maylord Library, which is incredibly popular, and you'll no doubt be aware from their Open Times letters pages in recent weeks, and the Super Hub investment, and had money left over for further investment all over the county, and instead yet more concentration of funding in the city in a building for which we still haven't seen the full business case. It's very lovely that you're allocating £0.1 million to the care leaver space, fantastic, but it's less than 1% of what you're allocating to the road. So to argue that this is, you know, an indication of the priority that you're giving to children and young people in this county is a little surprising. And on to the shift of employment land funding to capital receipts rather than borrowing. Yes, indeed, it is true that the borrowing requirement, the return on investment requirement for that previous budget line made it very difficult to find projects that would be good things. So in that sense, I think it could well enable development to make all funding coming from capital receipts. It's really outrageous to claim that the previous administration didn't lead this agenda. We were the ones, after all, who enabled all of the market towns to develop market town investment plans, which will be the foundation for any projects that go forward from this budget. £8 million, you mentioned, Councillor Stoddart, just now in the meeting, will be allocated to Modern Farm. That isn't specified in the paper here. But we also know that that's not enough to make the project happen. It wasn't enough to make the project happen before. And in fact, the level of application that we did, I've nearly finished, Councillor Lexter. This is my last substantive point and then recommendation. So we know that the application to the Levelling Up Fund for Model Farm was for £20 million. That was sadly rejected by the government. How, what assurance have you got that £8 million is enough to make anything happen on Model Farm? Because a business case was developed and it was 20 million that was required for Model Farm. So will this, again, be money that is wasted because we haven't got enough to produce it? Where is the business?
If we could start, please.
Okay.
So we have a meeting to go on with, and I appreciate you going through all the key points, but if we can, you say you've got some recommendations for it.
But I do think it's important, there's clearly no kind of scrutiny or questioning happening on these projects within Cabinet. So it's crucially important that opposition councillors shine a light on proposals that are being made, questioning them, highlighting consistencies.
Recommendations and we'll move on.
Okay, so my recommendation number 1 is I strongly recommend that the £2 million for the Superhub funding be reinstated instead of being allocated to the Shire Hall, and that if Cabinet decide to go ahead with the Shire Hall, which is not yet the decision that's been taken, that you find the £2 million from prudential borrowing. That's recommendation 1. Recommendation 2, strongly recommend that Cabinet do not commit any funding to the proposed Southern Road until you've developed a full business case, and absolutely do not spend any money on it until there's a clear full business case. I've got some specific requests with regard to the resurfacing budget. Will you commit to publishing A, the process by which decisions on how that money is allocated will be made? Will you commit to publishing the Baysala Road AI road condition survey that was done this summer in full, so that the public can see this objective assessment of road condition across the country? Will you publish the prioritisation list as it currently stands? And will you, D, enable parish councils to specifically apply into this fund so that we've got a fair and transparent process for allocating this funding across the whole county? Because unless there's that transparency and perception of fairness, there will be real questions about how decisions are made on where that fund will go to. And my recommendation, my 4th recommendation, is that instead of removing the retrofit hub, that you fund this out of capital receipts by reducing the capital receipts allocation to the road by £2 million, down to 5 million from 7, and recognising that retrofit is a clear priority, funding it with capital receipts until such time as you can find grant funding to take forward that crucially important work that is a much clearer direct benefit, saving money for householders in Herefordshire.
Okay. Thank you very much. Was that the final recommendation? Thank you very much. Okay, Councillor, would you like to make any comments? We'll go to. You've got 4 recommendations, and the Cabinet has heard them. So thank you very much for your recommendations. Can you go to Councillor, please?
Thank you, Leader. Follow that, said. I'll be quite brief, considering Councillor Challenge's detailed report. The first issue I wish to raise, and I'm sure Councillor Price would be surprised, but the £12.3 million project for the delivery of a Southern Link Road. Councillor Richard is quite right. Until a proper business case is shown, we should be, stepping back and taking it, make sure we get value for money. I know the last administration, when we debated the bypass, assured us that they would deliver a route from Belmont to the Rods. Not necessarily the one that's been proposed, but there'd be a route through there. That never happened. So I supported it then. The only reason I supported it, only as far as the Belmont Road, is to get because you got businesses and employees using the Abergany Road, and they can turn down there into Rotherham without going into town and causing congestion in town. So that's a boost to our employment, and it's been asked for many years, but only as far as that. And also, you see, because what we've got to bear in mind, Councillor Price, as you know,
80% of local businesses want the eastern route. And the eastern route, never mind what this SSI, it can be gone through there without touching the Lug Meadows with proper engineering on the embankment and all the rest of it. So that's what we should be doing. We should be listening to our businesses and to make sure we get what they want, because they've got to deliver the jobs and the wealth of this county. And we won't be getting that unless we do that. Now, the Bridge Solid Road, Iron officers roughly costed to bring a proper two-way system through there with a small bypass from Manly, roughly 26 million. Well, with 26 million to come through there, you've got a route straight through to the A49 and through there, and that's only a matter of road improvements and not major project. And that's something that should be looked at with what's being proposed here, and to make sure that we do the right thing, which is right for this county, etc. The other thing is, Chairman, the Shire Hall and the 1 million, etc. there, the improvements there. I walk around with other members. I was amazed to see what widespread opportunities there are to put in there all sorts of businesses and deliver the library, etc., and provide a first-class service with first-class bus stops and immediately outside, parking there. So I think that end of town needs a bit of a revamp. It's been neglected for a good many years, and the small businesses down there are struggling. So we fully support that, and the sooner we get on with it, the better. The 10 million for the road improvements, as has been said, that goes some way to improvement, but we warmly welcome that, because our roads are now reached what has been classified and defined as a dangerous state. Some of the potholes and verges that have fallen away on the rural roads in particular are life-threatening. So the sooner the better we get on with that, Leader, the better. So we fully support that. For all capital project, monthly budget control meetings, I think other members have said something about that, but I'm sure they will remember that there were deficiencies in some of the capital projects a few years ago, which were highlighted by me and my colleagues, and I've said it many times, and it was through myself and others contacting the external auditors that the capital projects monthly budget control meetings, their recommendation, which got adopted, and I'm pleased that that is being carried out, and I hope that it's closely monitored, and that's the situation. With the Western Road, if we come on through there, I imagine with the cost soaring, we're well in excess of 400 million, something like 450 million to bring that on through here, and that sort of money isn't available. Whereas if we listen to what the local business community wants, an eastern route, which is a fraction of that, and the Bridge Solid Road, which will do that there, on that side of the county, will be a big plus. And so we should be looking at those opportunities and listening to our business people. After all, they know better. All they're asking for is an eastern route and the A49 to be upgraded down to Ross. And that's not an expense for us, that's an expense of the Highway Agency. And it's time that we start to put pressure on our MPs to make sure that they deliver that. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Matthews. And thank you to all group leaders for expressing their views and putting forward their recommendations. I hear from Cabinet members, if you wish to speak about any of the views that you've heard raised today by group leaders. I would just make a few comments. It's important that we do put forward monies towards the Southern Link Road in the capital programme, so that we can begin to see how we go about continuing on with a project that was progressed in the first place because of the logic of it. Had things been different, I think that road would have been built by now, so we wouldn't be having to allocate the monies that we're wanting to get it back on track. The one thing I would say is that Councillor Harvey mentioned about officers. I have full faith in officers being able to advise us and to give us guidance about how to undercarry council business with the proper procedures and within the regulations. And I can assure you that we do listen to officers. That's not a bad thing. That's not taking political leadership. That is making sure that we get the best advice we can from the officers whose duty it is to advise us. With regard to government funding for roads, over the last 4 years from 2019, the government gave this council £63 million to spend on roads. So I don't think it can be said that the government didn't give us money. And £10 million is never going to fix every little road. But the issue we have is that, and we've listened to members of the public who say that they want more investment in road infrastructure. And that is why it's important that there is this allocation of funds. And that is added to the monies that we intend to spend this year with the Hotdol Fund, and the extra monies we want to spend in spring next year to address some of the road surfaces that are deteriorating. So I see these as positive investments and answering a call to where it is that members of the public are very concerned about highway network. So I think that investment is justified. Well, one thing I would just challenge anyone who said that the Shire Hall is an unwelcoming building. I don't think so. I think it's an iconic, beautiful building, and I think we should be very proud of it, whatever its use will be. And I'm very proud of it as an asset for Herefordshire and for our heritage and for this council. So, Cabinet members, you've heard some of the comments that were made, all of the comments that were made indeed, and recommendations. Are there any Cabinet members wish to comment? Councillor Gandy?
Thank you. First of all, I want to make it absolutely clear that the decision to take the £2 million out of the Super Hubs budget had nothing to do with the rest of the capital programme. And in my view, the decision, I would have been wanting that decision anyway because of the review of the Talk Community Hubs. As we discussed at the Health, Care and Wellbeing Scrutiny Committee recently, where support was shown for the review of Talk Community, we feel it is the right time to look at the good work that the hubs are doing and also where they can be improved. It's important that the hubs meet the needs of the community they serve and that good practice can be passed on and we can encompass the hubs and the website. The idea of the hubs was back in 2018, I think, and over the last 2 years, the numbers have accelerated significantly. Prior to the work on the review taking place, we had made an offer to local organisations to put forward an expression of interest if they wish to be considered becoming a super hub. 43 organisations did so. And I welcome that because that shows that within the community of Herefordshire there are a lot of voluntary organisations who wish to do more for the people of Herefordshire. This was far more than we would have been able to have funded with the £2 million allocated in the budget. It was therefore necessary, or it would have been necessary, for choices to be made with regards to which projects would receive the funding and which would be advised that their expression of interest had not been successful. In all cases, it was recognised that a significant amount of work had been carried out by the volunteers and staff when submitting their expression of interest, and I know that many would have been disappointed. And I think it has to be made clear that this was just the first step. So even if you were chosen as an organisation to be considered for a super hub, each of those chosen would have had to have gone through a thorough process with officers to ensure that they were suitable and the projects that they were putting forward were viable and fundable in the same way as you've talked about our capital budget today. And that would have been a long process. And some of those who might have been accepted at the first step may well have fallen by the way. And because we hadn't done a review of the taught community, we felt that it was absolutely necessary to make sure that those that we had identified to go forward to the next step would bring real benefit to the residents of their community. So it was therefore agreed that before we went forward, we would review the existing taught community hubs, which should have been done probably earlier because they have been in existence now for 5 years, to make sure that the decisions that we were going to be taking going forward were the right ones. The decision to take the 2 million out doesn't mean that we are dismissing the idea of the super hubs. Far from it. And I can assure members and those organisations who made their submissions that once we have a better understanding of what is being delivered, how many people it is reaching, where the gaps are, is it providing what the residents actually want, we will look again at the Super Hub project and we'll consider it for a future capital programme. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Swinglehurst.
Please, it's a question that responds to a very important point that Councillor Gandhi just made. So, Councillor Gandhi, you said the decision to remove.
Sorry.
It's crucial that I ask this because if it's got nothing to do with the rest of the capital budget changes, Councillor Gandhi, here today, why have you not reserved that £2 million for whatever it is you might decide is better to do with the
Please. The answer is because we can do it at another time. Please show respect. And I've said, please, that's enough. Please. When I ask you not to speak, can you just respond?
So just shut up and not ask questions.
No, you raised a question and it was being answered, but you were interrupting, so please don't do that.
Please, could I have an answer to the question I just asked?
I just said because it could be dealt with at another time.
But my question is,
Councillor Childs, please. Councillor Childs. The point is that allocation can be done at another time.
Money. You're proposing to spend all the...
Okay, Councillor Childs, you've been given your answer, so please can we move on? Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. No, I just wanted to set a little context that mainly the discussion that we're having here about the changes to the capital programme, but a great deal of the capital programme is unchanged, and on a sort of a quick tot up there round about the 23-24 capital programme, £15 million of expenditure on either sort of nature, biodiversity and nature-based activities like the wetlands and so forth, but also things that will help us get to net zero. So the investment in solar PV and the retrofitting project that's ongoing and that will be rolling out over the next couple of years. So it just sort of gives the wrong impression that we're only talking about a small bit of what is actually a much more complicated piece of work, where there are a number of streams of activity ongoing and from the previous administration, and officers work very hard to deliver those. So I don't want them to get lost in the mix. Thank you.
Any other Councillor Price?
Members of the public that will see this cabinet meeting online if they're not watching at this present moment. And I have to say that as the residents of Herefordshire, they think that this council is a complete laughing stock because they can't make a decision about a road. So let's just have a look at that, the green credentials, the carbonisation and all of that stuff. If you take the 465, which is the road which we're talking about, where the South Wye Link Road will link to, go west into Wales on that road and head for Merthyr. Now Wales has got a green agenda, planting trees. I'm a farmer. Farmers in Wales have to plant 10% of their land into trees, and yet on that road to Merthyr, they are spending tens of millions of pounds on bridges and footpaths and crossings and over a road to make it a pasture road to go and service the vehicles that use it on a daily basis. What we're proposing here in the South Wye is a small portion of roadway in the national picture. Now, Councillor Matthews, he always has a dig at me. I accept it, and you can have a smile, Councillor. You've been having a dig at me about infrastructure since I've been a councillor, and that's been a very long time. But you came up with a figure for 26 million quid for the Bridge Solars Road. Where you've got that from, I've no idea. Nobody's ever said it to me. I respect the councillors and the officers of this council. They have never come to me and said, oh, by the way, you could build a road and make the Bridge Solars Madley Road a suitable road for 26 million quid. This is probably the same basis that you came up with the Eastern Route costing 56 million pounds. Now, I have not yet seen the ACON report that was commissioned by the previous administration, which we're allowed to look at and we will review. But I know for sure it's not a £56 million route, and it doesn't, in my view, go far enough into resolving the traffic problems that we have around Hereford. So the South Wye Link Road is a road that I was responsible for trying to deliver, and we got planning permission for it. We have the funding in place for it, and it was started to be built. It was cancelled by the last administration and supported by councillors who afterwards I have had 2 or 3 come to me in particular and said they hadn't realised that they cancelled the South Wye Link Road. Now, we have been mandated, and I've been mandated, to get this back on the card, and to do so we have to have some funding in the budget to make sure that we can get this back to where we build the full business case for it, and that will lead into how we resolve the infrastructure around the city of Hereford. I don't think for any moment, not for 1 minute, that Bridge Solars Madley is anything other than just widening a road that is currently not suitable for the traffic that uses. We have to deal once and for all with a proper bypass scenario for this city. The South Wye Link Road is a necessary part of dealing with the traffic that wants to get into Rotherham. I've said many times before, I've mentioned to Councillor Chowns and Councillor Harvey before, that the southwest of Hereford does not have a market town. Rotherham is an important employment facility for all of the people in the rural area, and the South Wye Link Road is a great starting point to get into Rotherham. We are going to go through the processes. I trust the officers to tell us what we have to do and how we go about it. And I have no reason to suppose that they haven't done up to this point. And up to this point, nobody has said that we should not put some money into the budget or to the capital budget for working the plans for the SLR to get to a point where we have a business plan and we know where we're funding it from and we can deliver it. So that's my point on that. It's just the general public. When I have meet at parish meetings, when I meet the public in social places, they just say, just get on and build the infrastructure that is necessary. If I then start to look at the local plan, which is coming forward to the next 10 years for the core strategy that I was involved with in the delivery in 2015, that local plan is struggling to find places to build the housing requirement that is necessary for this county going forward. And as part of that, that local plan will identify, I'm sure, and the officers are working on it, and they will work with due diligence to make sure that they find places where it's developable, and they will be saying, there's no doubt about it, that the infrastructure has to be in place to build those houses going forward. Herefordshire is going to have more housing like every other county in the land. We have to have the infrastructure. We have to have infrastructure to support that housing. And at this moment in time, I believe that the South Mile Link Road is the basis for the infrastructure that is necessary to ensure that the local plan is actually a viable document going forward. So I have got absolutely nothing but incredulous attitude that people think that we cannot put some money into the capital budget to be able to fund what is absolutely necessary and what I know that the general public are saying, why haven't you done it? Why don't you get it done? It's been talked about for, what, 55, 60 years, probably longer. But we have to do it, we've got to get on with it. We can do it in a green way, we can do it in a way that allows for the traffic of the future to be able to get around this city. So I've got no doubt about it that this is the right thing for this capital budget to achieve. So I'm fully in support of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Price. Any further comments from Cabinet members? Okay, so we need a recommendation. Councillor Stoddart, are you going to recommend?
Okay, so I recommend that we accept the recommendations of A, B, C and D.
Okay, and do I have a seconder? Oh, Councillor Bringer, thank you very much. Yeah, I'll go into the vote now. So, everyone in favour? Thank you. Councillor Childs, are you voting in favour?
No, I've got my hands up to ask a question, which is when my 4 recommendations are going to be considered by Cabinet.
Well, we considered them whilst we were talking, we were having our debates, and as no Cabinet member raised any of the issues, then obviously it was not any of the recommendations that they wanted to put forward.
No, I didn't.
So the vote has been cast. Thank you for the votes, and we'll move on to agenda item 8.
I didn't hear any consideration of the 4 points that I raised.
Okay, right, we now move on to agenda item 8. This report seeks to update the procurement of the new waste collection service. This follows the adoption of the Council's new waste management strategy in July 2021, and subsequent Cabinet decision to adopt a new waste collection model in November 2021. The report for this item is from supplement 1, page 21. And to introduce the item is Councillor
Thank you, Leader. To set the scene for the procurement of a new waste collection service, I would like just to point out some dates and some times. The current contract expires on the 31st of August 2024. On the 25th of November 21, was the adoption of the 3 weekly residual collections with Twin Street Recycling Service in line with the outcome of the public consultation. £8 million annual revenue budget was set in the medium-term financial strategy for the new service, and the model was developed through a cross-party task and finish group and public consultation. In November 2022, the Council commenced a competitive dialogue procurement for the new waste collection contract currently live. Initially, 8-year terms with an option of to extend by a further 12 years. The new contract is to start on the 1st of September 24. Following the decisions and commencement of the procurement process, there have been significant cost escalations in the market, including large increases in inflation, the effects of COVID-19, supply chain pressures, fuel cost rises, and the impacts of the Ukraine war. Both delays and increased uncertainty from government regarding the introduction and financial contributions and new burdens to deliver the requirements within the Environment Act. A number of different options were explored with full consideration of delivering an affordable solution, delivering the waste strategy objectives, and compliance with procurement rules. Within the procurement process, bidders will be setting out their proposals to deliver the environmental improvements to deliver our net zero target. This forms part of the evaluation. As such, this report seeks to continue the procurement for a new collection contract
under the existing collection model to enable the phased introduction of the new waste collection services when introduced to continue to charge for garden waste collections. This enables the council to continue the procurement to award a new contract to future-proof the contract to introduce the remaining aspects at the appropriate time, subject to funding, legal responsibilities and improved business case. So that's the outline of the new contract and why we've had to look at various options that are available to us. I'd like now to ask the officers to give more information for those members who request it, or to take any questions that they may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Raymer. Councillor Swindlehurst, I think you wanted to make a comment.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, I mean, for me, this has seemed like a very long journey because I was actually on the waste task and finish all those many years ago. So I feel like I've been talking rubbish for a very long time. What I think is really important to be clear about here is the ambition to move the service to the 3 weekly residual hasn't changed at all. The ambition hasn't reduced. We also then need to recognise the service that we have is very good. We have 1% to landfill last year, also this year we're on target for that, which is very good. But for anyone who's not aware, the waste goes to an energy from waste plant. We generate electricity from it. However, we could increase our recycling, and that's what the purpose of the change was going to be. And we still want to get there. However, we're faced with the realities of living within our means. So in order to get there, we'll have to take a phased approach. And I'd like to pay particular tribute to the officers who've been working on the platform here. They really have been putting their shoulder to the wheel to get the best possible version for us. And I thoroughly commend them for their efforts in this regard. So we're going to get there. I also want to say that again, setting this in context, we are doing other things with waste streams, pilot schemes like repair cafes, which are coming out. Very proud that one of them has appeared in my village next door to me, and local people are very excited about that. And the reusable nappy scheme and support for recycling for flats and so on and so forth. So, our eye is not off the ball, but we have got a budgetary reality to deal with, and therefore we're phasing the approach. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any more Cabinet comments or thoughts on the proposals before us? If not, we go to group leaders for their comments. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Councillor Lester. Thank you, Councillor Raymer and Swindlehurst. This is really disappointing news, and I think we all recognise that in this room. The paper set out, and you've talked about today, the fact that this is due to cost escalation, both market factors and government failure to implement the Environment Act 2021, the delays to implementing that, and crucially to resourcing it. And I think it'll be interesting for residents to understand that even when a law was passed in 2021, even at the end of 2023, it's still nowhere near being implemented, and government is on actually putting its money where its mouth is on waste management and actually providing local authorities with the funding and the structure and the long-term policy coherence and so forth, that we actually need to put this stuff into practice. So I'm very pleased to hear that this administration remains committed to the long-term vision for the new recycling and waste collection model. But we're faced with quite a difficult position here because, well, first of all, let me start with some questions. Councillor Bramer, can you confirm what the current recycling rate is in Herefordshire?
Can you make your questions and then we'll come back to them. Thank you.
Okay. I would have thought it was quite a simple question. I understand it's roughly 40%. recycling rates in authorities that do well in the UK are currently up around nearly the 65% mark. So we have historically low and stubbornly low recycling rates in Herefordshire, and this means that we'll continue to have that because this whole change to the new model was about shifting that. So I've got a couple of specific questions, and perhaps if Councillor Bramer can't answer these, then perhaps Ben will be able to assist. So given that we've now got no timescale for implementing this, what will you do instead to drive up those stubbornly low recycling rates while we wait for government to pull its finger out on the financing of the next steps? Question 2 is, how can we go ahead with procuring new vehicles if they're not to deal with the type of bins that were originally intended? And specifically, I'm unclear about this. I wasn't able to make it to the political groups consultation, but I did catch up on the video catch up, and I don't think this was made clear. Are we going to have to buy new vehicles for each phase? That isn't made clear in paragraph 36. I understood that the new vehicles were going to be different from the old vehicles because we're moving to a different system, but we're sticking with the old bins but buying new vehicles, as far as I understand it. So isn't this going to end up being more expensive overall, and might it be something where we should stick funding into this ourselves? Because, as I said at Cabinet last time, short-term cost cutting creates long-term further costs. And thirdly, do we have any idea when the provisions of the Environment Act 2021 are going to come into force?
Okay, thank you. Councillor Harvey, do you have your hand up?
I haven't, but I have got something to say. I recognise that the figures that Councillor Chowns quoted in terms of our recycling rates, but I think partly our recycling rates are somewhat depressed because we don't collect green waste in the way that lots of other councils do. And I know that it was something that was being proposed that we moved to in the new contract. And I see that currently what's being proposed is that we continue to offer a paid for service to people who want that. But I don't think the volumes of green waste that are collected through that paid for service are included in the recycling figures. But I'd appreciate some clarification on that, one way or the other. I think it would be I think the service that you can buy into is very good, and it certainly works. I use it, and I know quite a few people in Ledbury do. I think partly because we've got a composting facility which is very close to us, just over the Gloucestershire border, where I think a lot of the waste goes. It's disappointing that we're not able to commit to moving to the planned way of improved separation and the food waste, weekly food waste collection straight away. But if it's simply the case that the council can't afford to do that without the level of financial support that was originally planned to come from government, then I can understand that that's something that is constraining for us at this time. I'm glad, and the Independents for Herefordshire are glad that the ambitions for the overall contract are still in place, but it is very disappointing that national government doesn't seem to be putting its weight and its central government funding for local government behind improving the waste collection services in the way that they could. But if you could provide some clarity on the green waste collection and whether the paid for services are something that that we will be including in our recycling figures in terms of information provided by the contractors, that would be helpful. And I know businesses do find it quite irksome that their business waste, quite a lot of which is recyclable, is not recycled. And I would really, as a group, we're really concerned to encourage the business waste collection services to be maximising recyclability of business waste wherever possible. And actually, we have had examples of businesses who have been told that they are contravening their business waste collection contracts, where they try to recycle their own business waste because they're told once they've contracted for it to be collected, they are actually going against their contracts if they dispose of the waste in another way. And it would be helpful if somebody could look into that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Harvey. There's some clarification needed there. Right, Councillor Matthews, and then we will round up by answering some of the questions, the questions that have been raised.
Thank you, Leader. Very brief. I haven't had time to really study this paper, but the recommendation that have been made quite sound as far as I'm concerned, and that a phased-in system taking place. And I think that's the best way forward, so we support the recommendations. I did speak to my colleagues and they're quite happy with that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Matthews. Councillor Braymer.
Thank you, Leader. Just one or two of the questions. Clearly, my recollections just go back to 2019 when I was a portfolio holder of both waste collection and waste disposal. Of course, that isn't my remit at this moment. I'm purely leading on this because it's a contract that has gone into some problem. However, the recycling rates I remember in those years that I held the waste disposal and collection were always somewhere. Sorry,
it just went off. That's right. Thanks.
The rates, the recycling rates, were always somewhere in the low to mid 40s, and occasionally almost gave me the opportunity of saying that we got to 50% in some of those years between maybe 2010 and 2019. However, since COVID and in 22-23, we only achieved a recycling rate of 38%. Compared to 42% that remained at 19 to 20. So this, it is a movable feast, and there are certain items that will make it more or less obtainable. But certainly the green waste collection would be something that would improve the target, improve our percentages greatly. And I just wanted to make it clear that that's why there are counties with 65% rather than Herefordshire coming in something like 38 to 42. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Braymer. And there was a query about the purchase of the vehicles with regard to the types of bins. We have clarification on that. Mr. Boswell, are you happy to clarify that point for us? Thank you.
Is that going through okay? Yes, so the procurement process itself has been designed so that to enable the standard service and then the transition to the new ones, in that the standard service is designed to be able to turn those on in the vehicles that would come forward through that solution. It doesn't then require it to be completely undone. It's done in a way that it can then transition naturally as we turn them on. So the actual vehicles themselves will be proposed by the bid submissions, and we'll get that in the final tender solution. And that's so that the bidders have confidence that those vehicles can deliver as per their proposals that they'll evaluate. So, in answer to your question, the vehicle fleet, you would have some of it now, and then when we need more as per the turning on the additional aspects, they would come forward, but it would be done in a way that the vehicle fleet is
designed to accommodate that. So it's designed now to turn on in a way that's structured and works. If that makes sense.
Okay, yes, and then there was a question about commercial recycling, Councillor Harvey. About the issue about commercial recycling, could you just clarify?
Can you remind me of the question?
It was that some commercial enterprises, they're being penalised for recycling because of their contract.
I don't believe so. I mean, we offer our commercial waste service, which we have a high number of local customers on. I don't believe we penalise them on recycling rates for the waste collected. We do offer a commercial recycling service so people can take that up. So I'm not sure I understand the question.
Shall I repeat it?
Yes, go ahead.
Sorry, there's a couple of issues. One is that the businesses don't believe that their recyclable waste is not recycled, that it goes into the incinerator or into landfill rather than being recycled. But also, if they try and recycle it locally, because people ask for cardboard boxes, or they want to have craft projects, or they want to do something else with material offcuts or whatever, that they're accused of being in breach of their contracts with the trade waste companies, whether it's ours or other ones, because once they sign up to them, they're supposed to dispose of all of their waste through that business, rather than giving it away if it's going to go to a craft project or a local community group or something else.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. I think that's quite detailed. Obviously, we're not responsible for what other companies do, but anything that we can do to support recycling rates for commercial business users, we will do. So can we have a more detailed conversation about that outside the meeting, if that's agreeable to you? Maybe we'll have a meeting with Ms. Bottle and try to get out, see if we can improve that in any way.
Happy to, but also it'd be useful if we were able to wrap those recycled figures, if the waste is being recycled, into the overall recycling for the county as a whole.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Harvey. Thank you, Councillor Swinton. Okay, if there are no further comments from Cabinet, I think we should go to the recommendation that's put forward. Items A to G.
I did ask a third question, Councillor Lecter.
Yes, can you remind me, Councillor Giles?
It's about whether we have any indication of when the government will implement the provisions of the Environment Act 2021.
No, we're not aware of that. Okay, thank you. Right, so we have recommendations. Councillor Brainley, do you want to propose the recommendation?
I propose the recommendation A and G, and recommend this to Cabinet.
Okay, seconded by Councillor Harvey.
No, it's not me.
Councillor Harvey. Councillor Harvey, what would you like to say? Thank you, Councillor Swingle. End on that. Right, okay. So it's been proposed and seconded by Councillor Swingle. All in favour? Okay, thank you very much. That's unanimous. Right, item 9 is to close the meeting, so I would like to thank everyone for their attendance and contributions. The next meeting is scheduled for 2:30 p.m. on the 26th of October this year. I will now formally close the meeting. All members of the public